and Anthony.
Hi everyone, I'm Jabeen. I'm I live in Salisbury. I'm with a national organisation called Assemble, and what we do is encourage people's assemblies to be set up locally within towns and cities, and it's all a way of building democracy from the grassroots up. We also encourage the assemblies to take the results of their assembly, which is the community charter, to their local councils. And also those community charters get sent up to the National Citizens Assembly, which is called the House of the People. So the results of that National Citizens Assembly is to then have a charter for the whole country. So that event was held last year and it will be held again this year. Yeah, so that's what we do. And if anybody's interested in people's assemblies, please drop me a line.
Thank you.
You also respond to planning applications, which is why you got in touch, which is great because you were talking about a diversity net gain on planning applications. So thanks.
Yes, that's right. I do sort of scan through planning applications and just check if they're meeting the net biodiversity gain of 10%.
That's very valuable. Thank you, Jabin. And Julian has put a link to timetoassemble.org in the chat. Is that the right one?
That's right. There's the national one and then there's the local Salisbury one I put underneath as well.
Thanks for those links, Julian. And what a shame that Wiltshire Council a couple of years ago decided that they don't endorse people's assemblies. That came out of a full council meeting decision and they think they're undemocratic. Just because it's a different democracy, I don't think that makes it undemocratic, but that's my personal view. So Mark,
yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. I'm the chair of Salisbury Democracy Alliance, which is why you have the link there to our website. We run our monthly democracy cafe in Salisbury Library, but we excitingly now are teaming up with Assemble to run, as far as I'm aware, the first sort of people's assemblies in Wiltshire. And these will be taking place in Salisbury. So they are really for Salisbury residents. I put a little explanation in the chat further up, quite near the top, just to outline what the people's assemblies are, and also the three meetings assemblies that we're running in Salisbury, one in March, one in April, and one in June. So we're running these three assemblies, around 60 people per assembly. We're intending to feed them into the May elections, so candidates from the various wards we're hoping will attend. We've got 2 independent candidates on board already, and then we'll feed into the National People's Assembly, as Jabeen was outlining. So yeah, I've had similar conversations with Wiltshire Council to yourself, and you're quite right, they don't think that citizens' assemblies are useful or valid in any way. They are the elected representatives and they will make the decisions.
Thank you. And Julian has put the dates, Saturdays and Sunday afternoons, into the chat of those 3 that you're holding. 60 people at a time, that's really impressive.
Yeah, that's the intention. Yeah.
And do they each have a theme?
There is no overall theme. Each assembly will come up with 3 issues that they feel are the most important and solutions to those issues. And then the 3rd assembly will distill those into a community charter of the 5 key issues that Salisbury residents see as important. And that community charter is the manifesto, if you like, to influence local city councillors. And that will go forward to the People's Assembly, National People's Assembly.
Thanks very much indeed. I think almost rounding up our selective round of introductions, Anthony Kirby.
Hello everybody.
EY.
Anthony Kirby or Tony Kirby. So basically the reason I'm here is because Adam Walton is a neighbour and friend, and educated me on the Wiltshire Climate Alliance quite a while ago, actually. So he introduced me to Keith, and Keith and I got talking about the types of things I do in my day job. So basically, I head up regulatory reform at EY. So I'm a regulation type person, one of these people, Andrew, take the punch away at parties. I also was involved with Ross Savage, who's my local MP. I live in Slaughterford and in North Wiltshire. That's the Climate and Nature Bill, working with Zero R to try and basically improve, try to get MP support behind that on the 24th of January. And because for the very reason, Keith, you were saying that people's assemblies are not really favoured by some in the government, that bill has been, I wouldn't say it's been eliminated, but it's certainly been kicked down, the can's been kicked down the road, really. Other things I've been involved in, so Wiltshire Wildlife Trust and Somerset Wildlife Trust. I work with the chair of Somerset Wildlife Trust, who's called Rupert Taylor at work. My work itself is regulation in terms of climate change mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity, circular economy and pricing, prevention of pollution on land and water. And then from the social agenda, it really is things like gender pay gap, women boards, prevention of bonded labour, civil housing, and also neurodiversity. So quite a few things there to keep me out of trouble. Yeah, and very interested if there's a type of community type event in mid-June for midsummer, for June 21st, 20 and 20th. Very interested in helping out there where I can. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much indeed, Anthony. And I was in Slaughterford for a long walk the other day. It was very beautiful, if a bit post-industrial. A lot of the things, yeah.
Going to say we have a paper mill down the road over the River Bybrook. If anybody's been to that part of the wood, Castle Combs just upstream. So if anybody's not familiar, please come and visit. I can even offer tea.
Great. Does anyone else want to introduce themselves? Vicky, you haven't been with us long. You might be new to most people, or you can opt out.
Hello, I can introduce myself. I'm Vicky. I live in Bradford-on-Avon. I'm chair of Climate Friendly Bradford-on-Avon, and I've just become a member of Wiltshire Climate Alliance, and I'm particularly involved and helping with the COP event that we're looking at doing in June. My background is I worked for Sustrans, the Sustainable Transport Charity, for 12 years. And I took redundancy in July, and now I'm freelancing for Sustrans. So that was quite funny. But yeah, my passion is about trying to reach net zero and doing anything I can with that, which partly is why I took redundancy from Sustrans, not having a kind of core aim of climate change and kind of reducing climate change. So I'm branching out on my own and trying to get more involved directly in reducing carbon emissions. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vicky. Vicky lives a few minutes walk from me, and we've pounced on her to join the steering group of Wiltshire Climate Alliance straight away, as she does a brilliant job of chairing Climate Friendly Bradford-on-Avon. Okay. Now we've got a packed agenda, and I'm slotting one extra thing into the agenda. I'll just run through it. We want to just give you updates, which will be hopefully brief, on the state of play with the local transport plan consultation, the local plan, which is grinding along in its process, Limedown Solar Farm, and if anyone wants to contribute brief updates, please, on the Climate and Nature Bill. If I'm not sure if it's possible to have a simple guide to what's happened, or you could just give us a link to a clear explanation. And there have been recent developments politically and in terms of fossil fuels and so on in Britain and a place called the USA. I'll just kick off, I think, and it'll be very selective on local transport plan in a moment. I want to add something to the agenda before we get to item 2, which is thinking and talking about the May the 1st local council elections, which is that I want to address the Wiltshire Council's full council meeting the 25th of February and see if there's anything we can sensibly do and organise before that, for that date. And then talk about the elections. We hope, if the timing is going right, to split you into little breakout rooms for 10 minutes after we've mulled over the elections and heard an introduction. I think it'll be from Adam, is that right? Okay, and then report back, and then we'll move on to the third main item, which is our Wiltshire COP, variously named Summit, Wiltshire County. I think of it as the Wiltshire County Climate Summit in my mind. We're very actively organising for that, and we're very grateful to the people who've joined us and immediately launched into working groups. And I was at least one meeting today about that. So that will give you a briefing, story so far, open up to opportunities for you to help, and again go into a second round of breakouts provided the time allows. I'm hoping that we'll be pretty much finished off by 8:30 today, and not 9 and not 9:30. So there we go. The updates, miscellaneous, a little about a Wiltshire Council meeting, and then the elections, major item with the breakouts, and then our summit meeting with breakouts about that as well. All right then. Now, have I got anybody in the room who wants to give us Dummy's guide to the state of play with the local plan review? First, Wiltshire Council's local plan review, for example, Bill, or anybody else. If not, we'll just have to say pass. Or
Andrew,
I can say
there's very little to report at the moment on that.
Little to report.
Yeah, it's no change from last month, where it's gone to the inspector, and we're waiting to hear from the inspector's manager to tell us when and if we will be called. So we're just waiting at the moment to hear.
Right, so there's a programme officer appointed. They have an office, they have an email and phone number. They'll be organising the programme, and pretty soon, we hope, will descend from on high a list of the topics the inspector, the examiner, wishes to be to hear about and who they wish to hear from. It's selective, isn't it? Not like a planning inquiry.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's that. Local Transport Plan LTP4 draft was the consultation closed a few days ago. Time flies. 10 days ago. I wrote a long form response on behalf of Wiltshire Climate Alliance, which I'm going to confess now I submitted at 23:59 on the closing day, and it was received, and it was some of it was still in draft form. Several of us put in individual consultations or other written consultations. I wonder if there's anyone who'd just like to give us a quick glimpse of how it went when you tackled the online consultation form. I think that would give everyone an insight into how frustrating this has been. Any volunteers?
Well, I suppose, yeah, I mean, I could say something. I went into it, first of all, just to find out what the questions were, and then ended up making a submission that only had one tick in a box. And then I had all hell's job trying to get that to be reviewed or deleted. I went through various people to, steer me in the right direction. I ended up talking to the Commonplace Help Centre, whose contact details were not accessible on the consultation page. I mean, absolute nightmare. Bill collected actually a lot of the faults that were wrong with that. Do you want to say anything, Bill, or just should we get?
I was waiting for everybody else to finish first. I was expecting 100 people to stand up and say it was awful, and it was. I think I don't know how to describe it other than that it was very badly put together. in terms of a consultation, never mind what they were consulting about. So how it worked was created by the council themselves, in my view, because they employed a company called Commonplace to develop their questionnaire for them and then launched it. I don't think anyone had looked at it from the council because it just was so difficult to deal with. Didn't give you any space to do anything very constructive in responding other than ticking a box whether you agreed or not, and then an open space for saying why, what else, but only on a limited number of subjects. So you weren't allowed to comment on every item in the document. There were, I think, something like 950 pages of document to read. And the way they structured it was awful. The document itself, I felt, was very bland, didn't address the issues, didn't give, I think Andrew described it as a menu, not a dinner or something. It was a sort of selection of things that could happen but never would because they've got to commit to them. So it was awful. And I think, I know I said I would collect things together, and Jeremy, I am, but I just don't quite know how to deal with it, other than maybe to just send it in, and if we ever wanted to, we could challenge the whole process. But you know, it's a big thing to do. But I have got at least 5 people's comments now back, so now I'm back online. I'll maybe have a look at it again. Anyway, other people may say more or less.
Anyone else? Catherine, you're muted. Matthew, you're muted.
Had a very amusing town council feedback on the whole thing, which is, you can imagine trying to, in Chippenham, trying to do something by committee on a form like that is almost impossible. But the amusing thing I managed to do, along with Nick Murray, was I managed to get everybody to vote against growth, even the Conservatives, which I thought was a small victory in itself. I thought they don't know what they've just voted for, do they? So that was amongst a very difficult form to feedback on, as you say.
Okay, yes. We found out that for most of the so-called tiles or sections of the consultation, the number of responses they had received at the end of the period, it switched off promptly at midnight on the Friday a week ago, was in single figures. So in hindsight, and a learning point to take forwards, is that I would, as part of the transport topic group within Wiltshire Climate Alliance, I would encourage more people to look at it and respond to it. And even if we weren't ready to make recommendations. Jeremy?
Well, they weren't in single figures. They were the median number of respondents to each of the tiles was about 60.
Sorry, I meant double figures, didn't I?
Yeah. Okay.
Less than 100, not triple figures.
No.
My mistake.
I think there were only 2 tiles that were in triple figures. And those were the simple, easy ones with a 1 tick box sort of. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's an example. Bradford and Avon Town Council looked at it. In other words, the one councillor looked at it, was impressed by all the good talk about encouraging active travel, promoting buses and trains and so on, and all the generic, what they used to call mom and apple pie, good things in it, and gave it a fairly favourable response. But we thought, between us in the transport topic group, that it was vague, and we identified specifically that there's something called the emissions gap, what you think your emissions will be like without your plan, which will be dropping because EVs are coming along and the government will be regulating that, compared with what your carbon emissions from transport will be like if the plan is implemented, and compared again with your ideal emissions reduction trajectory, which ideally a local transport plan should have the high ambition of following that dropping line, the trajectory. Wiltshire Council's one meets about 10% of the ambition. And that's why I was quoted in the Wiltshire Times as alleging that we were being gaslighted, because the plan looked so plausible and pleasant, and yet hidden in the small print, the 600 pages of the plan or the 475 pages of the sustainability assessment you found that they really weren't doing much. We also found out that behind the scenes, there were senior councillors, cabinet member, who vetoed specific kinds of measures that restrict access, so clean air zones, low emission zones, using parking as a way to influence how much people drive into towns, parking charges. Those had been vetoed and actually pulled out of the plan as drafted by Wiltshire's main transport consultants. And yet you'd read it and you'd think it was a lovely, progressive, forward-looking plan that's going to take us into the era of extremely low carbon emissions from transport. And one of the things I spotted late, probably late on the Friday, was that there's a whole extra document Wiltshire has recently submitted to the local plan review, which we'll come to, which has a list of major road schemes that Wiltshire plans to build to accommodate economic growth and housing growth. Now, I couldn't find anything in the local transport plan that said, oh, by the way, we'll be building some roads and we'll be upgrading some road schemes. So that's the sort of gaslighting I was thinking of. So Anthony.
Sorry for the, I'm really fascinated by the emissions gap in the plan there. Is the plan relatively short term, i.e. 2 to 3 years, or what sort of time period are we talking about?
2025 to 2038.
Oh, right. Okay. That's fairly medium to long, isn't it? In terms of where they're going. Okay.
It is. And I think they divided their actions into short term, medium term and long term.
Yeah. Very
front loaded to more actions than the officers can possibly manage to achieve in the short term.
Yeah.
And then some of the ticks where they thought, my subjective impression, they felt a bit intimidated by having to do that. So they pushed that into the medium term. Things they really didn't want to do, they pushed that into the long term. There were some good bits, don't get me wrong, but it was very vague. But you could compare it with their actual intention to build a bunch of roads, or on the other extreme, you can compare it with the Western Gateway Subnational Transport Body's Strategic Investment Plan, which also closed last week, and it has a fantastic amount of bus service improvements, rail infrastructure investment, and the like. With one scheme in Wiltshire, and that was an improvement to a road junction. So that's, I'm afraid, where we think we are. I gather there's going to be an extraordinary meeting of Wiltshire Council on the 11th of March, which I gather may be devoted to local transport plan LTP4, and it may be the adoption of the plan, and it may be for technical reasons to do with the examination in public of the local plan, because they probably want to have a local transport plan in place, or they probably want to have one in place in order to apply for government funds. That's more than enough on that. Here, how are we doing? 25 past 7. Let's turn to the couple of other updates. Is there someone here who can update us on Lime Down Solar Project?
So that Sophie and another colleague are at consultation, which is happening right now, and they'll hopefully join us later and give us an update on that. So maybe we can defer that a little bit.
Okay. To be clear to all old regular members and newcomers, Wiltshire Climate Alliance's policy has been discussed and agreed, and we've put out a fact sheet which is available from the website. We are in favour of ground-based solar panel developments, which inevitably some of them are large, and so we don't oppose Lime Down Solar Project. Our view collectively is, by consensus, is that we support it. Individuals, of course, can hold whatever views they want and can take any action that they want. But I didn't want to skate around that fact, and I recommend that you download the excellent recently revised fact sheet. We could possibly even put it or a link to it in the chat. Other updates. Does anyone want to tell us about the Climate and Nature Bill, or comment on anything else that our government has been approving or not approving, or indeed the rest of the world?
I can comment a little bit about that and leave it for others to also jump in as well. So I put a couple of links in the chat, Andrew, with regards to the private members bill. which was going before Parliament on the 24th, second reading going before Parliament for an MP vote Friday before last. And unfortunately, it didn't get through. It was meant to get 102 MPs in favour, but really, I think there was a device that was used, even though Zero Hour, which is the activist group that was trying to manage the publicity around the event, and they posted snapshots of over 190 MPs, including several Lib Dem MPs, a couple of Conservatives, 2 Greens, the rest Labour. So really good support in terms of expressions of interest. There's 6 parts in the bill. I don't want to go into every single part, Andrew, but really we're talking about emissions, reversing decline in nature. We're talking about fairness and just transition. I think that's one of the key ones to try and get some of the red wall seat Labour MPs behind. And it's also the idea of the Citizens' Assembly, which proved to be controversial. I didn't know why, but that was an area where it was felt by some Labour representatives, mentioning no names, but who didn't feel it was appropriate over and above what we already have under the Climate Change Act 2008. I don't know whether I've done that justice. If anybody else is very familiar with the bill, then just please jump in and support.
So in a nutshell, the government decided to not let it proceed to committee stage. And again, in a single sentence, what promise or assurance did they give the bill's MPs promoting the bill?
I think what they ruled out is the idea of the Assembly, unfortunately. But I think the sense is all the climate change mitigation adaptation and push behind net zero. I mean, given the fact that we signed nationally determined contribution at Azerbaijan in Baku for COP29 is a very, very good signal indeed, because we and Brazil were the only 2 countries that actually signed that. So that pledges the government to yeah, exactly. to keep on track in terms of evidencing its delivery. Obviously, with all the things that are going on right now, with post the election November the 5th in the United States, there's a fair amount of headwind coming from one country. So we'll have to wait and see, Andrew, how that turns out. But I think on paper, we do have the pledge going forward on the climate change. What I'll be keeping a close watch on, though, is the social provisions under just transition, i.e. fairness. I'm reasonably confident that should be okay. What worries me a little bit is the biodiversity part. I'm not hearing so much on BNG, biodiversity net gain. Although here in Wiltshire, we're going to have a launch of Entrade, which is a biodiversity net gain engine, which is being developed by the University of Exeter. So I'm really hoping that for anybody interested, Entrade falls out of the Broadway initiative from 2020. Very positive initiative, definitely putting Wiltshire on the map there, and sponsored originally by Wessex Water. So I'm hoping that we will keep the momentum going, but I suspect that we'll need to give that an extra push just to make sure we can hold the government to order.
Anthony, you're a mine of information, and I'm sure you've got more links we could put in the chat, or you could contact us. And
I'm very happy. Guy Thompson's the CEO for Entrade, and he's launching officially tomorrow, actually, funnily enough. So yeah, very, very happy if anybody reaches out to me, or if anybody wants to, I'll see if they've got a URL to it, which I can post into the chat.
Thanks. And I've also put in the chat just now, folks, the contact email address for Wiltshire Climate Alliance, which is just an inbox that people check and then forward things to whoever's most likely to pick them up. Gosh, so let's not talk about the good news and the bad news from the United States or from the actual climate itself. Let's crack on then. And this is the item that I'm sorry to say that I didn't give you notice of this item. There was a little glitch in our communications. We would have sent you an amended agenda, but the 25th of February is a full council meeting. This does link to our next topic, which will be the local elections on the 1st of May, because it'll be the last full council meeting for Wiltshire Council before the local elections. The 98 councillors, most of them will be there. 2/3 of them are members of one political party. The rest are a scattering of the others and independents. And it was in the 2019 February full council meeting that, thanks to lobbying by Bill and a lot of others, and some impassioned speeches by scientists, I think a bishop and lots of young people, they adopted a full climate emergency motion and another more insipid climate motion about the county's own greenhouse gas emissions. Well, so that's the 6th anniversary of that, 5th anniversary of the founding of Wiltshire Climate Alliance, because a year later nothing had really happened. So a bunch of us got together, and we are now more than, or depending how you define it, halfway to 2030, which is the aspirational stretch target for Wiltshire as a county to become net zero. And so I've been turning up at some cabinet meetings at Wiltshire Council, other meetings, one or two others, but I've been feeling a bit lonely recently, going along there, making a statement, asking some follow-up questions and so on. And I would really like it if we were able to put up a bit of a showing of one kind or another at the 25th of February meeting. Now, let me just run through the things you could do. Let's assume that you can't be there. Well, you can make a written statement. You can ask a written question or two, which, if you send it in time, will receive a written answer, and you can ask a follow-up question on the spot, or you can delegate somebody else to ask a follow-up question. You can attend just as a member of the public at County Hall. You could wear some very green clothing or something. You can't go in with placards and banners. You could, on the other hand, be outside County Hall at 9:30, because the meeting will be at, I think, 10:30. Make your noise, displaying placards talking about the climate and the fact that it's an emergency. And then you could write to councillors and so on. So is there anyone here who thinks they can do any of those things whatsoever? Given that the agenda comes out, say, a week or 10 days beforehand, you've got a hook to hang in some questions or statements. Has any of you been wanting to start a statement? Catherine, for instance, you had your debut. You made a statement at a council meeting quite recently. What was that like?
Yeah, I did. It wasn't so bad, actually. I think I was very, very cross about the motion, and I just felt I had to go and say something. My legs were shaking, but I managed to get through my statement, and that was fine. And I did get an applause, so I felt quite good then. So yeah, it wasn't so bad. I've written questions before and got written answers, but I've never been able to go and do a follow-up question. So that's fairly easy to do, actually. That's not too bad. So yeah, it was quite an interesting experience.
I mean, in the past we've had, salsa bands, haven't we? The whole XR drum crew turned up, and there's been sort of street theatre. I'm not sure we'll get that this year, but it's still early days, I suppose. Well, not really.
Okay, Jackie.
I just wanted to say, with Andrew's help, I did submit a question for the first time in my life. So, and I did get a detailed written answer, which did make me feel quite a bit better. So I can highly recommend that approach, even if appearing in person feels a bit daunting. I'll be very interested to see what the agenda is, because I think if you are aware of the wider world, it's nice to be able to, maybe just jolt them in, point things out that maybe they should be thinking about, and hopefully it's taken notice of.
They even seem to need reminding that the climate is an emergency. Keith.
applied some of my grey matter there to this thing. You know, local two things really. If it's their last meeting before the next elections, does that mean there are going to be things they're really going to try and rush through, or will they all just be backpedaling to avoid doing anything to upset the voters? And the second question is, because I've not really looked at this, do council elections of this nature follow the national trend in the Houses of Parliament? Are they diverge? In which case, half of them are going to lose their jobs. I'm sure people have a view on that and be brief, but are we going to see a big change?
Well, that's a matter for we'll in a few minutes start talking in full scale, and I think you've asked the key question there on elections. If people would like to put a question or make a statement and not sure what to do, you can turn to us for guidance. Sometimes we've got more questions than we can ask because there's a limit. You're allowed to ask two-part questions. So sometimes we need to sort of farm them out to people. But if you want to say anything about, for instance, flooding in your town or high winds or your children's or grandchildren's worries about the climate, this would be a great opportunity because I think the message wants to be climate advocacy hasn't gone away. There's a big slice of the public who are concerned, and so it could be a factor in the May elections. Keith asked the question, will they be rushing things through? They have a really clunky and predictable process where in February they pass the something budget, council tax setting, this and that. You can look at their past meetings every 3 months, or you can look at the last February's meeting, or you can look at the February meeting before the last election, which would be February 2021, to see what kinds of things are likely to come up. I would be surprised if there weren't some showboating political motions put by individual councillors wanting to display their anti-woke credentials or perhaps their progressive credentials, like the one we had on private motor vehicles, like the one we had on support for farmers who deliver nothing but environmental benefits, and probably some political point scoring, but it remains to be seen. So there we are. Hazel.
Well, I went to the last one last year, and I must be honest, there were so few outside the council offices. I actually put my hairdresser off for another day, and I told so many about it being happening and hoping that people would turn up outside, because that's how I came to WCA, was that you had a big event outside at one point, and I signed to join WCA, and there were so few last year, and apart from a group of ladies there, and I just wondered, you know, is it getting smaller now, or, you know, I just feel like we ought to be there to push, you know, and be there in person, you know, to say, look, we're just normal people, but can we just concentrate on certain factors, you know, and not be pushed aside, you know? And is there going to be somebody to lead us through something like the time before, when I was interested in it all? There was somebody discussing it outside with you know, but nothing seemed to happen this last.
There was one time the big demonstration about the Westbury incinerator. That may have been what the discussion would have been about outside. Yeah, that was the same event where there was a salsa band and a die-in in the lobby of the Trowbridge Civic Centre. The street theatre aspect, there was little wind turbines, and you know, it was an all-in-one event. It was amazing. But of course, at that stage, XR were still on, you know, on a rise. There was no illegal arrests of people who were demonstrating, which of course now is a major concern for activists and protesters. And I've got to say, I think the progressive element of all politics is in decline, and the regressive element of reform, who, by the way, are having a conference in Trowbridge on Sunday afternoon, you know, that's on the rise, and I think it's absolutely it's what the hell is happening here?
Yeah, yeah. I went to the Westbury one outside Westbury about that several years ago, and I think we've just somehow just not to be violent or anything like that, peaceful, you know, to be out. I'm an attender of Quakers, and I was thrilled to see that there were people outside Parliament when they were trying to pass the climate and nature bill. But then from a distance, because then I was in America, I noticed it just was not even thought about inside Parliament, you know, and it's just, I don't know what's going on, you know, but I do try and pass the word on, you know, so.
Thank you, Hazel. And Tim has offered to write a question. The group of women and children who were outside a meeting once, maybe they call themselves the Green Grannies or Green Grannies and Child Care Workers. Unfortunately, they tend to gather, am I right, on a Thursday outside County Hall. And even when it was a Tuesday or coincided with a council meeting, their timing was 10:30, which is when the meeting starts. Now, councillors go in at 9:30 for their pre-meetings in their political groupings. But so maybe at the next or a next one of these monthly meetings, we might want to talk about the problem of making ourselves more visible, having a bigger showing, putting on events, gathering what you might call the troops, because it does seem to be a challenge, as you've said, and Jeremy as well. So Julian has put the link to the meeting page in the chat. That will suddenly have the agenda at some point, and we could try and send an email out saying the agenda has been published, which it is normally 8 or so days before the meeting. Any other comments on that from anybody? Bill, I don't know what your take is on this. You've been through thick and thin on this, haven't you?
Yeah, I've seen 100 people outside in the first years we were campaigning, and as Jeremy said, we've had the big one when the incinerator was at its peak. But generally, it is quite difficult to get people to come along on a weekday. A lot of people are working. So in February is a dreadful month to go and park outside the county hall because it'll be pouring with rain or something. So it is quite a difficult thing, Hazel. And I wish that we could get more people there, and maybe, you know, pragmatically, we should change the date of when we tackle it. But it would be a shame in a lot of ways, because that's the day they proclaimed that they supported a climate emergency motion, and that was the day, as Andrew said, that we formed a group the following year to start WCA up because of the problems. But I can't. It is very difficult to get a lot of people mobilised on that time. In that time. But I would suggest that anyone who can should write a question and will make a statement. And if you can't read it out, it doesn't matter. The more questions we ask, which they have to answer, and they will put it in the answers they put will go into the records. So whatever question you ask will be answered by the council, and you will get a response. It might not be the response you want, but at least it's then on record that you've asked that question, and you can use those as evidence in future discussions with them.
Thank you.
And I will say that one positive thing, we do have a king who's believes in climate change, thinks it's urgent, and wrote a book about it. I've just put the ISBN of his Ladybird book into the chat. I don't suppose he'll come on the 25th of February. So time to move on then, I think, and watch this space, our website, our emails. We'll see what we can do at least on the 25th of February. And let's turn to what we might be doing between now and then and the 1st of May by talking about the local council elections. And am I right that Wiltshire Council is one of the councils, and all the town and parish councils in Wiltshire are also having elections? Who can tell us more about this? Adam, have you got some briefing for us? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. It's 1st of May, local elections, first time since 2021. Last election was all 98 seats in Wiltshire Council up for grabs. And yes, you're right. Town and parish councils having elections where there are elections contested, if you like. I mean, so all existing councillors will be up for re-election, but obviously in a lot of parish councils, they're not contested, so they typically just get reappointed. But certainly all the 98 wards in the unitary council are up for grabs. So the question is, well, what do we do, WCA, if anything, around the local elections? So I thought it'd be worth just talking about what we did last time in 2021, just as a prompt to see if there's interest in doing something similar, or indeed if ideas for doing something different. So it's also worth thinking about what we did in the general election last time. So the general election, we did an awful lot of work at constituency level, profiling candidates and looking at their policies and encouraging local groups to have hustings and things like that. I don't think that's practical with 98 wards for us to do at all, but we could certainly, as we've done before, is get the word out to local groups to encourage them to engage with their local councillor candidates and ask them about their environmental and climate policies, and try and push climate and environment up the agenda, at least making the candidates aware that it's a question that people are asking. The main thing that we did last time was a hustings with the party leaders for the Wiltshire Council election. So this was it was a Zoom event in the evening. It had pretty good attendance. I don't know, there were certainly over 100 people joining and asking questions. And we had the leaders of Conservatives, Liberal Democrats, Labour, and I think the representative of the independent grouping attended. And each of the leaders gave a short statement of their sort of environment credentials and policies. And then we threw it open to questions. So we had people submit questions in advance, and then we had a general Q&A. Did it make a difference, the elections? I don't know, very hard to say. I think it did make the leaders think about the climate. I think it also, from a WCA point of view, helped raise our profile and perhaps give us a bit more of a credibility for engaging with the parties and the councillors after the election. So I would suggest it's something we could think quite seriously about doing again. As it happens, I chaired that event last time. I'd be happy to do it again, but obviously if there's someone else who wants to do it, they're very welcome to do it. I've still got a package of materials that we used last time in terms of how we went about inviting the leaders, sort of rules of engagement for the debate and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's a little package that we could easily roll out again if that's something WCA wanted to do. I'd suggest we did it probably sometime in April in the lead up to the elections. And the other thing we could think about, as I said, is looking at, encouraging our local groups to engage with their councillors. That's probably what I want to say. Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was just worth saying in terms of local engagement with councillors. Obviously, climate change is a massive issue, very relevant in Wiltshire as it is anyway, but there are a lot more specific local environment issues that you can engage with councillors on, like, I think at the beginning people were talking about flooding, sewage, nature degradation, development, transport, all those sort of stuff. There are a lot of issues which to do with the environment that engage people a lot more locally that we can encourage people to challenge their councillors on. So I think that's the main thing I was thinking about. And if people are interested, I'm happy to sort of chair a small working group around preparing for the local elections and take on board any ideas that people have that they'd like to do, they'd like to share. That's probably what I want to say. Happy to discuss, answer any questions or whatever. Julian.
Yeah, just a quickie. There's that Who Can I Vote For site, which we use in the general election. It's quite a good place to gather statements from candidates on their position on everything, but obviously we'd be asking them to put out their views on environment and climate change. Do you think that's a useful thing to encourage, that we can ask people to encourage their candidates to do?
If does that apply to local councillors? I don't know.
Yeah, so the election's on there. I just put the link in the chat.
Yeah.
There are two ways you can do it. One is you can encourage them to do it. The other is you can encourage them to get a statement, and we can actually upload it, because volunteers can actually upload it. So yeah, it's a useful way to gather people's statements, and so that we can so that people can see what they're doing, and we can later refer back to it.
Fantastic. That's a useful resource. Thanks. Yeah, I remember that from the election, main election, general election. Yeah. Jez.
Well, three things actually. Andrew did a spreadsheet last time of the results and the percentage that the winners got and what the turnout percentages. And one point on that is that on average, 43% was the turnout in Wiltshire, which means that almost 6 in 10 people didn't bother to vote at all. Which I find, that's perhaps a group that we could press into voting or encourage voting. The other thing is that I know we are apolitical, but does that apply to reform? Because they have said pointedly, in fact, Richard Tice in Parliament on Monday, I think, was talking about net stupid zero. So on those grounds, I think we can definitely say that we shouldn't be voting reform.
I mean, I think WCA has always had an apolitical stance, but if you say we're a group that's campaigning about climate change, it's pretty obvious that we're not going to be supporting reform. Whether, up to the steering group to say whether they want to come out and say that. So specifically criticise one party, or whether it's just so obvious from the context. I don't know. View from the steering group on that?
I've chaired meetings. Here. Sorry, I'm not visible. That's better. I've chaired meetings, some of these meetings, when I knew for a fact that we had councillors or candidates from 4 political groupings present in the meeting. That does include at least 1 independent. It's open to us to say that we don't like reforms policies, or a more tactful way might be to say that we don't favour the individual candidates' policies. I don't know how to answer that one. Jez,
one to think about.
You did point out that if it's in their manifesto that they oppose climate action to reduce greenhouse gases, then well, we feel the opposite. So we could comment on their manifesto, and we could comment on individual candidates' published views.
Yeah, Jackie, got a question?
Yes, just quite horrified to see that apparently Reform are in the lead at the moment. If an election were held tomorrow, they would likely to poll the highest vote, if you believe in polls. But I was actually going to point out about the council climate scorecards, which are quite a useful thing to engage with candidates about, because as ever, that compares our council with other councils and shows what they could be doing. The new scores are going to be available mid-June, so hopefully they're going to be available for the COP. I have on the inside that Wiltshire are going to do better than last time, mainly on the strength of their local plan.
Wow.
Which is seen as a good plan.
I'm butting in here. I thought they were going to be rated on achievements and not plans, but I'll shut up.
Yeah.
They do write some good plans, they just don't do very much.
Exactly, that's what I've been saying. And sadly, I think their recent performance, like we were talking earlier, is coming too late to be included in the scoring, because the assessments were done up until, the end of the autumn.
Yeah, okay.
But
Well,
it's still a good thing to discuss with candidates, I think. Though.
Yeah. And obviously the new one's not out till after the election, but we could still.
Exactly. So the current one will stand.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Let's take one more comment and then arrange how we're going to break into breakouts, which will be 10 minutes for this, and what we
Bill,
should address in the breakouts. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, Bill just had one question,
Yep.
I think. That's last
Yeah,
one.
no, so the points really. At the last time round, I think we scored the manifestos. We also put a survey out to the parties. So we sent it to their headquarters, whichever party it was. The Conservatives said they didn't want it, so we didn't send it, and then they complained they didn't have it.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So we sent it to them. But I think that provided quite a good baseline for working out where the parties were in our, if you like, our manifesto. And I think we should definitely be doing that again. And
yes,
we probably need to get in touch with whoever's managing their election process. The other thing I would say is that my local councillor is retiring this year, and her replacement is already canvassing in the villages around in the 5 villages that she looks after, and is already attending the parish council meetings. So I think waiting till April to send anything out is going to be miles too late. Just a point.
Sorry, just say that last bit again. I didn't quite catch that. You just muted yourself. Sorry. I can't hear it now because you're muted.
You know me, Adam. I'd like to be muted. I'm saying that it is too late if we leave it till April because of those things going on. And I'm sure it's happening in other areas too, that people are starting to get serious about the election, especially if they're changing candidates.
Okay, good point. Well, if March, then we need to really get our skates on in terms of planning it then.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Can I also remind people that there's an email address called election@wiltshireclimatealliance.org.uk. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. It'd be really good to have people sending in leaflets and any information they have about candidates standing, so that we can help to follow up in those wards and coordinate any other inquiries we get. In particular, encourage the good candidates to put their statements on who can I vote for, and then we can point to those from our website and just encourage people to have a look at who can I vote for and see what people are saying on climate.
Great. Andrew, back to you.
Yes, thank you. So 10-minute breakouts we think is worthwhile. You can talk candidly. One of the questions could be, what do you want to do about the election? Another thing is what you might find useful for Wiltshire Climate Alliance to do. But the sting in the tail there is if you could help us do it, that would be marvellous. So any other comments on what a focus or question for the for these breakouts about the general election? And if anyone wanted to say something about this February council meeting, or indeed the 20th of May council meeting after the election, you're welcome to add that. And in the breakouts, can you try and remember what breakout room number you're in? And hopefully one of you will be willing to do a very short feedback from the breakout rooms. Julian, you can all...
Can I ask something, Andrew? Please,
yes, please,
everybody,
please.
if you have some time, doesn't have to be a lot of time, to help doing anything or passing it on to your local group, please let us know, and let us know in the breakout groups or whatever, but we need help.
Yeah. So I'm ready to open the breakout groups. What I'm proposing to do is, since they happen to be set up nicely, is I'll open 6 breakout groups by constituency. That just gives people, close together, a chance to discuss it within their sort of local areas. Join the other one, or don't join at all. If you're by yourself, I'll try and sort that out. And also, I would suggest the key thing to do is try and make a note of what you know about the candidates in your area, and please someone write it down, and then let's you don't necessarily have to speak it all at the end, but please write it down and be able to get it to us at the end. So is that all okay? I'll open the rooms now. and we'll see. Yeah, I think
breakout report backs, please.
Yeah, Southwest, Bill. Go on.
Sorry? Southwest, okay, Southwest Works has nothing to report because there's only 2 of us and only 1 of us was in Southwest Works. so we didn't get very far really.
Brilliant.
Other than having a good chat with Kate.
So the Salisbury was another one.
Yeah, I was a bit of an imposter in Salisbury, but it doesn't matter. We had a fruitful discussion, I think, and I guess our plan to put back to the main group here was that we think questions to candidates is a good way to go. So if we can get some good climate and nature related questions to pose to the candidates in the wards, then collate the answers, and then distribute those findings, if you like, through whatever networks that we can find, so that people are aware of what candidates' views are on climate and nature and what they intend to do if they are elected. So we were thinking about trying to maybe do press releases, local radio, our own social media, any way we can to publicize what the candidates' views are on climate and nature issues, and thereby inform voters of potentially what they may or may not wish to vote for. I think that's all we can do as a climate Wiltshire Climate Alliance, really. I may be wrong though. There may be lots of other brilliant ideas out there. Anyway, that was our take. Have I got that right, other Salisbury people? Yeah, great.
Yeah, incidentally, I've just put a link in the chat to the results from last time, so you can see what shape of it looked like in each ward last time, if you look at that. So East Wilts is another breakout. Who was in East Wilts? So
I gate crashed East Wilts.
All right,
and we had another West Wilts gate crasher. We had Joan, who's just pointed out that although she's in Rawton, she's not in a Wiltshire Council division.
Yes.
So I guess, Joan, you're observing for what's going to hit you when Swindon gets round to having local elections. I think that we can boil it down to almost one thing. Wiltshire Council candidates are not likely to engage with international issues like emissions trading scheme, cap and trade, carbon tax and dividend. Although that's what we mostly spoke about in our breakout. But they may engage with local issues. And I've got a suggestion that I didn't even bring properly to the breakout, which is this. Wiltshire Council has now refreshed its climate strategy delivery plan with a bunch of actions for the years 2025 to 2027 or 28. Especially if we précéded and simplified their delivery plan, we could be asking our candidates whether they endorse all the actions in the delivery plans, or which they endorse, or which they'll jolly well do anything about whatsoever. That would give us a locally focused way to address candidates, and that's what I think we were possibly going to be working towards in the East Wilts. Sorry, I'll come and visit, but I don't live there. Breakout room.
That's a great one.
Is that helpful? Thanks.
So Melksham and Devizes, which is another one. There's a few people in there. Who's in there?
Yeah. They're waiting for me to speak, probably.
Well, we basically,
although Jackie can
I'm
speak.
going to say, we basically decided to vote Catherine.
I declare an interest.
Who's up against Dominic Munns, who's
Anyone
already
else not
using
declared?
nasty underhand tactics.
Any other intel about candidates and that? Maybe not.
I think, but I do think just generally that in addition to calling them climate and nature policies, we need to emphasize the benefits that they have to their constituents, because don't just turn, you know, they mustn't just turn off because they think it's a climate policy. You're actually talking about warmer home, warmer, safer homes, safer streets, cleaner air, cleaner water. These are all things that nobody could argue with, could they?
Yes, quite. So, and the other one was Chippenham.
Yeah, Shirley just got a point.
Shirley.
For you and Melksham and
Sorry.
divided.
Yeah, I just wondered, I mean, there is a dichotomy between those that are going to try and trade on their record because they're the incumbents and what we would like to see. And I wondered how we were going to reflect that, because in a sense, there's what we would like them, Wiltshire councillors, to have done, as well as what they plan to do. It's all very well saying what they plan to do, because they can make that sound wonderful. It's what is their track record, and in what respects do we believe they have failed to be where they should be by now, given that it's 6 years since the climate emergency was declared. That was just all I wanted to say.
Right, thanks. Shall I do Chippenham then? So we talked about the hustings thing, because I was in that and felt that was probably a good thing to do. It's interesting no one else has mentioned that, so let's come back to that. But in that topic, around that topic, we said focus it rather like, and Andrew was just saying, much more on sort of local environmental issues rather than on the really big picture global climate things. And also talked about ways of engaging with local groups and local candidates. And I think the survey idea, I think, Richard, what you were talking about in terms of questions, effectively would be, I think, a survey that we would do of candidates, asking them questions and then trying to collate that, which we tried to do last time, but the Conservatives vetoed it. But doesn't mean they would necessarily veto it this time. So, yeah, that's good. Shall we summarise then, Andrew? Is that okay for me? Happy for me to do that?
Yeah, there was one other group, but
you're on mute, Andrew.
Oh, there's another group. Sorry.
Yeah, there was just it was called other, and it was South Cotswolds basically, and me in Swindon. So I don't think we had anything particular to report back. Do we? Is there anything we wanted to say, Andrew or William? I mean, or Keith?
I think we just talked direct right into the incumbent, and there's the balance was really strong in favour of the person in Malmesbury, and he looks very likely to get voted in again. He's Lib Dem and sort of pro many environment things. So we thought we'd focus around stuff we're doing on the business and ask them some questions about changing Wiltshire Council's policy for making business green rather than just the things the council control. That was it.
So I guess there are two potentially concrete actions coming out of that. One is the candidate survey, and obviously there's potentially 300 to 400 people that would need to go to, assuming that each seat is contested by at least 3 candidates, and then potentially doing an online leaders hustings debate as well. So views on that, because I think we need to decide if it's going to do it in March. We need to decide today whether that's actually something we prepare to do. Andrew.
So shortly we might need a show of hands who will come onto the elections working group, which meets a few times on Zoom, I guess. But first, I want to endorse what Shirley suggested, challenging people's track records. That's great when it's an incumbent, and we will have an incumbent in it. Well, I guess we won't, because a lot of older councillors, perhaps especially Conservative councillors, may be not standing again. That's valuable. The other thing I want to say about community areas is the climate adaptation and climate impact. Because if you look at the geography, you could be asking your candidate, when you're sitting on the community area board, what are you going to do about the impact of extreme weather on your community area, which will be very specific geographically? High winds, floods, intense rainfall, wildfires, hitherto impossible wildfires. These will all be coming at us in the next 5 years, and then again with more intensity in the following, and then in the following 5 years. So will they commit to climate adaptation? And of course, that doubles back to, in that case, are you committed to greenhouse gas reductions?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jez.
I'm going to raise the elephant in the room here, which somebody's already raised, that, you know, Reform, remember them?
Yeah.
Are currently leading the polls. And you have to think to yourself, how would happen if Wiltshire Council became a council run by Reform? And how do we, you know, abut that? How do we challenge without promoting? This is the problem. I mean, they work on the basis that if they're in the news, it's good. So it doesn't matter whether they're in the good news or the bad news. It's like the Rolling Stones. And I can't think of a way of challenging them without sort of promoting them. And I'm very worried about the possibility. I'd rather have any other party. You know, at least they profess to be addressing climate change. Reform are conscious, as somebody put in the chat from their manifesto last time. I mean, it's absolutely shocking. And I think
yeah. No, it's a very fair point, Jez. I think the thing is, anyone who's engaged with us at all knows that Reform are anti-climate change. So if you're anti-climate change, you might vote for Reform. If you think climate change is a problem, you probably won't vote for them. We're very unlikely to change someone's mind on whether climate change is a real thing in the course of the election. So we can certainly highlight in whatever way we like, you know, via doing a survey of candidates and parties or having a debate, the fact that Reform are anti-climate change, and we just put that information out there. I mean, if we jump up and down and say, don't vote Reform because they're anti-climate change, what's going to happen? The people who aren't going to vote for Reform aren't going to vote for Reform. The people who are going to vote Reform will say, yes, absolutely, that's why I'm voting for them. So is it going to change anything? I don't know, you know. But I'm worried like you are about it. They could, I think someone said in the chat, they could split the Conservative vote. Maybe that's a good thing. But I don't think it's a good thing having them in the council, because it certainly won't encourage more climate-friendly policies. But I think all we can do is raise people's awareness of that. That's all, yeah, would be my view. I don't, unless you can think of something more directly you want to do.
Don't go
wouldn't
there.
necessarily advocate. Julian.
No, just to point out that electoral calculus says, although nationally they're in the lead, they still put Conservatives in the lead in Wiltshire.
Yeah,
it doesn't say by how much, yeah, the other point. Sorry.
Okay, Claire.
I just wanted to mention that I think all the evidence is you have to be clear whether we're trying to promote ourselves and educate people about the climate issue still being there, to bring it into people's minds, or whether we're trying to do something that aligns climate friendly policies with people's actual needs. So as Jackie was saying, to insulate your house and be warmer and all the rest of it. Because the evidence is that in local elections, people are voting sort of quite tribally. I don't think they're going to sit down and examine lots of literature. No. So I think you have to be really focused. And for example, I've just been reading an article when it makes it clear that women are more interested in climate change. Men are interested in the mechanics of heat pumps and how to insulate things and all the rest of it. You have to. It's an article talking about net zero dad who loves his heat pump. Not about anybody here, I'm sure. So are we trying to appeal to somebody, or are we trying to promote ourselves? Because those things are different. Because the battle is not going to be joined all around Wiltshire climate change, obviously, and there's a lot of other issues. For example, in Salisbury, it's all going to be about public toilets. I can tell you, That's all anybody's interested in is public toilets.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. I think local elections are much more about local issues. I think the objective, I think I mentioned sort of at the beginning, what my view is if we do anything at all, it would be to raise the profile, get people to have in their head when they're thinking who to vote for, what's this person's position on the environment in the broadest sense of, you know, do I want to elect someone who's actually going to take the environment seriously or not?
What I'm saying is, do you disguise that, not disguise in a malignant way, but disguise it in a clever way by talking about water quality and not mentioning the word environment or climate change? You talk about water quality, or you talk about protecting, you know, I mean, we've had all this river work and people are absolutely obsessed with the water bowls, you know, but they had to be moved. Everybody got very excited about it. So are we going to disguise it anyway or dress it up in other language, or what we're going to do?
I mean, the thing is, we're not putting a position out. We're not a political party. We're just asking the candidates to give their views. And the question, if we did a hustings, for instance, if we're talking about that, the questions will come from members. So it's whatever members, being people in the electorate, it depends what those questions are that people want to ask. If we do a survey, then obviously we would have prescribed questions that we would ask them, and we just have to design those questions to be ones that are relevant. But like someone made the point, the question could be, what do you think of the Wiltshire Council's climate delivery action plan? I think it's a very specific question that, you know, do you support it, don't you support it? It's that sort of question. And I think if we're doing a survey, if we want to get any meaningful results, we probably don't want to have more than about 5 questions in it. So they're going to be fairly high level questions. So I'm not sure
what are we going to do with the answer? If we have a candidate who says, I support the Wiltshire Climate Alliance delivery plan, and we say,
well, we would then publicise that to our members. We could use it perhaps in the hustings itself. We could do a press release. You know,
to the average voter, they've got no interest or knowledge of what that thing is.
You're absolutely right. And maybe we just say, forget it. Don't worry. Let's not do anything because no one cares. I mean, that could be. That's a perfectly rational.
People care about other things, don't they?
No, exactly. I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm saying, is the survey going to be focused on what voters currently care about, or is it going to be focused on the sort of policy and strategy things that we get embroiled with?
If we're going to do a single central survey with perhaps 5 questions in it, we're not going to ask people about water bowls in Salisbury. You know. So maybe it's not a good idea to do it at all. You know, I don't know.
Well,
if that's not relevant to people,
we could pick out key planks from Wiltshire Council's climate delivery plan, such as about home energy retrofit, or such as things that are going to have a high impact or that might be slightly contentious, reducing traffic, and boil it down to several things and ask our candidates, do they agree with those? This is Wiltshire, not Wiltshire Climate Alliance, but Wiltshire Council's delivery plan, and so do the candidates endorse it? I just want to respond very briefly to what Jeremy said about reform. Let's not forget, we will have some allies in opposing reform. We oppose it because it's against, well, personally, many of us might oppose it for a number of reasons, but as a group, we oppose it because it's takes a stand against climate action. But our allies will be the other 3 parties plus the independent candidates. So they will be very busy knocking reform for all kinds of reasons. We might not have to do a lot of that. We can back off and let other parties do that job for us, which means that we can focus on the detail of climate change, adaptation, the seriousness of the emergency, and the things we want Wiltshire Council to be doing, the new Wiltshire Council to be doing for the next 5 years. So I'm slightly more relaxed about reform because I've just remembered that there'll be other people opposing them as well as us. Thanks. Oh, and before you go, can you put your name in the chat if you want to even attend one Zoom meeting of an elections working group?
I've got a few more questions now. Bill?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the survey thing needs thinking about, because we could ask them 5 detailed questions about how, or 5 questions about how they're going to deal with the climate issues in the next 5 years. That's one way we could do, or how they've dealt with it in the past, and is it good enough, and blah blah. Or we could be asking them, like Andrew said, about real local issues, about flooding and high winds, and how they're dealing with all that stuff, and road quality, road maintenance, drainage maintenance, whatever it is that is actually indirectly related to climate, but forcing the issue that it is a very local issue and you are going to get really impacted on this, as Andrew said, in the next 5 years and 10 years. So maybe the focus should be less directly about climate and more directly about what would happen, or what has happened, in fact, and will continue to happen more and more, is local impacts of climate and how you're dealing with that. So it's just a suggestion to take a completely different approach than we did last time. If you look at what we did last time, we asked them specific questions about about their attitude to climate and what they were going to do about it. And this time, if we had taken reality into account, if not our dreams of 2021, that we maybe should be focused on the real local issues, and real local issues that are climate related.
Yeah, it needs some thought then. Yeah. Who's next? Tim?
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point to Bill, actually. I think we do need to broaden it, because it'd be difficult to get hustings or engagement from candidates or from the public if we only focus on climate and nature. It's sad, but I think it is also true. I wondered, if we're trying to focus locally, will it be difficult to do that at county level? I wonder if it might be like the groups were following the Westminster boundaries. So perhaps, although it's a local election, we try and target questions at a more local area, like a constituency. If we go to towns, and then what about people that are not in towns? That could give us 50 different questionnaires. So I'm just thinking about practicalities that might be difficult. Yeah, so just a thought that maybe following the constituency boundaries for local questionnaire.
Even the constituency boundaries wrap an awful lot of different areas into it as well. That is quite difficult. Yeah, I'm thinking of my constituency in South West Wilts now. It starts in 3 towns and moves all the way down through, the whole of the countryside area in the southwest of Wiltshire. So it's really tricky.
Someone suggested 18 community boards, which might be another breakdown.
That might be a better one,
Yeah, because they will be sitting as in groups of 3 or 4 or 5 in their area board meetings every 3 months for the next 5 years. And the area boards is where a lot of, it's more possible to engage with elected councillors, a lot of action, a lot of funding goes funneled through into local community groups for better or for worse, and you can actually book time in an area board meeting to give presentations. I think that's an important level for Wiltshire Climate Alliance to work at, because they know that if they're elected, they'll be sitting on an area board. I'm sorry, it's coming 20 to 9. You've got a couple of people, Judy, and I've also put a link how to donate to Wiltshire Climate Alliance into the chat. But Judy, unmute.
Sorry, I just wanted to applaud your idea of focusing on specifics, because from the way you sound, it sounds as though what you are communicating is that you are coming from the position that the climate is happening and it's urgent. Climate is happening and it's urgent. That means we're going to have a lot more potholes or whatever, which is which is possibly, the strongest way to communicate the urgency. So I just wanted to say that sounds really, really good.
Thanks. We'll have to cap this now. We'll no doubt send an email asking people to a Zoom meeting to talk about the elections, but we have our we've got a couple of things actually, mainly the COP, our June event, our Wiltshire County Climate Summit by any other name, where some working groups are making progress. But I think we're also expecting Sophie to arrive and be able to brief us on the latest with the Lime Down Solar Project. Not here yet, but about.
I don't think she's coming, according to WhatsApp messages.
No, I just had a message. She said she is joining us.
Oh,
right. Okay. So we, by the looks of it, we're now aiming for a something like a 9 o'clock finish, which gives us time. Who wants to introduce the item on our?
Well, hang on. 5 minutes ago, she said, "No, I'm having my supper."
No, you don't need some 10 minutes. She said.
Right. Maybe we should ask William and was it Anthony?
Tony is left.
Oh.
Well, I'll give you an overview, and then
yes,
William can say what we're doing on business, and if Jackie wants to chip in with what's going on in the community, she can do that. So the COP development is the 21st of June. We're planning an event, of people that don't know, with the council. So Wiltshire Climate Alliance and the council have formed an alliance to put a COP on, which will be looking at local businesses and communities in Wiltshire and what they can do in terms of reducing carbon impact, basically, and removing carbon. So that's what the sort of focus is. We've now got to the point where we've agreed that we, the WCA, are going to focus on the business end, and they're going to focus on communities, although we'll both work together on both. We'll lead one and they'll lead the other. And I think from a viewing point of view, what I've seen so far, they'll need more help with community than they're admitting at the moment, so we should get really stuck into that as well. We've got some really good teams. We've got 4 teams working now on it, which is fantastic and absolutely brilliant. Lots of new people as well helping, which it warms my heart to see it, to be honest. William's leading the business one. Is Kat still here? Kat, you here? Yeah. Kat's leading the community, actually, so she could talk about that and give an overview of where we've got to so far. So, William first.
Muted. There we go. Well, the business team, we've had a couple of meetings so far, and we've met once with the Wiltshire Council. We were encouraged by the business engagement team of the Wiltshire Council that they did seem to be very keen that something happened and ready to work with us. We're still trying to get a follow-up meeting with them, and I think that typifies a lot of working with the council. We are currently in a phase of trying to connect with potential partners beyond the council, understand what other people are doing in the business community across Wiltshire, and to try and get a very clear structure for the day. And so we're trying to work out really how much we work to engage the smaller businesses, which are the ones which we desperately need to engage, but which are the hardest to engage. And hopefully our partners will help us to work out the right level of ambition for that. The first year, 2025, is very much a matter of getting things off the ground and engaging people, and trying to set up the right kind of momentum and steering group to get a far larger event going for 2026. And so we're trying to work through those issues, but we've got to hit the ground within the next couple of weeks with a very clear definition and with partners actively working with us. And within that, one of the partners that we seek to engage with at a top level is the Swindon Council, and work out how we make this into a joint Wiltshire and Swindon event. I think those are the main things. Bill, is there anything you want to add to that?
Only that council have openly said now in cabinet that they are supporting this. So we've got nowhere to go. So we better get on with it. Okay.
You're muted, Bill.
Sorry. Catherine, are you there? No, not there. No. Jackie.
Hi. I've been a bit of a failure in that I've had other things going on. But Catherine's been leading very ably, and Mel, we've just been a little bit stymied by we wanted clarification from Wiltshire Council what they understood by the fact they were leading the day. And I think Stacey's been in Purda, I suspect, getting the next Warmer Home grant sorted out. But thanks to Bill's final prodding, she's going to meet up with us next week. So, and seemed quite positive, I think, from her email, Bill. And I personally, and I'm hoping we can make it work, is to look at communities where they are reducing carbon, getting down to net zero, practical in their community. How are they doing it? How is, and I'm sure you've all got examples. You may well have an outstanding parish where the parish council are working with the climate group, are working with an eco school, are working with an eco church and the gardening club. That would be perfect if we could, have those as shining examples to help other communities to get there. Because it can't be done just by a climate group or just by a parish council. You've got to engage all aspects of the community. So really looking forward to some feedback from you all as to, what's working in your communities and how we can learn from that to help share it with others. We've already been talking with Great Bedouin and Tisbury, who, have achieved a lot in their villages, but I'm sure they aren't the only ones. So please get in touch.
Jackie, I'd love to get in touch. We've got an Arosha campaign. Castle Combe Church, for instance, St Andrews is. I know Mike Roberts there, and any mention of eco churches, and he's a massive naturalist, and he'll be really keen to get involved. So yes, if you can send me details of that, that would be great. Thank you.
Brilliant.
By the way, I'm a church treasurer from Slaughterford, St Nicholas as well. So if we can actually use the church network and the diocese network, I'm sure we can get a lot of churches actually behind this. So
brilliant. Thank you, Anthony.
No worries at all, Jackie. Thank you.
Picking up on Anthony's point, I'll just finish now, Andrew, but picking up on Anthony's point, if anybody has any contact with a local community group of any sort, please get in touch with Jackie or Kat and talk about the whole issue of how this could work within a one-day event in County Hall in June, and how you could actually deliver good information to advise other people on how to progress. I think it's really, really important to do that from as many local groups as possible. Okay, I think we're done for the moment, Andrew.
Yes. Is anything anybody need to add? I will just summarise that. Say, Wiltshire Council Climate Team have booked rooms in County Hall. They booked half of County Hall for us on Friday the 20th of June and Saturday the 21st of June, and that includes free use of the atrium, the council chamber, which seats 100 people, and some medium-sized and smaller rooms. That our approach is going to be that we unbook rooms when we know for sure that we don't need them, but they have been very cooperative. Julian.
I was just going to suggest that what we could do is finish up the meeting by having breakout rooms for anyone that can still stay, because it would really be good that it's smaller groups discuss who we can each engage and make a list of that, and that would help to do it. I see Jackie wants to say something about that, but possibly before we did that,
I would just say let's go to Sophie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so and then let's go into breakout rooms and try and bottom out the details. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome, Sophie. And we did other updates at the beginning of the meeting, but now could you update us on the status of the Lime Down solar project?
Yes, and sorry that I had a bit of difficulty getting onto the call earlier, and I'm on my phone, not my laptop, so hope that it's coming across clearly. But yeah, so I've just come from the webinar, which is the first consultation event of the series that Island Green Power is running for Lime Down over the course of the next couple of weeks. The consultation lasts until I think the middle of March. The key points that I picked up from that are that they've refined the site, designs and plans quite a lot. It's almost 50-50 solar panels to biodiversity land. The exact breakdown is 53% solar and 47% of the land will have no panels, and it's just dedicated to environmental measures, screening and so on. They're going to be using a mixture of tracker panels which follow the sun and fixed tilt. Their agricultural land classification survey showing that 70% of the land is not best and most versatile. So there is a small proportion, I think, that is grade 3A and a little bit of grade 2. They are putting in 15-meter offsets either sides of the footpaths. So the talk, from the campaign against the project that the footpaths will be sort of narrow corridors. Well, they won't. They'll be at least 30 meters wide. There'll be a community benefit fund. They haven't said how much the fund is going to get. They are waiting for the guidance to be published from the government on that, but it sounds as if they're going to adhere to the government guidance. And as part of that, they're offering for some of the local residents to get solar panels on their houses, or as somebody in the Q&A pointed out, well, most of us live in listed buildings, so we can't have solar panels on our roofs. So so they said, well, those people could have other alternatives like energy efficiency and so on. I did ask about whether they would look into community shared ownership, and they said that is something that they are giving some consideration to. The other interesting thing, I think, is that if for anyone who lives in the Melksham area, the early consultation was looking at putting the battery storage between two sites, one near Whitley and one near the solar farm in North Wiltshire. And they have ruled out the Whitley site for battery storage. So I'm sure all the people who live down there and in Brian Matthews' constituency will be very happy about that. So I think, as a group, we should encourage people to respond to the consultation. There is a very active campaign group called Stop Lime Down, which has been distributing a lot of leaflets locally, which are full of misinformation, which I would go as far as to call lies about solar in general and about the project in particular. So we, as a campaign group, we don't have to take a position pro or against this particular project, but I think we should be out there correcting the facts and the misinformation. We've also updated the Wiltshire Climate Alliance leaflet on solar to reflect the change in government and government policy. And if anyone is available to help distribute those copies of those leaflets at the Lime Down consultation events or in some of the villages that are affected by the project, we would love to hear from you. And also anyone, I don't know if anyone's got any contacts with the youth group, but I think it's good to get people on Facebook responding to misinformation that's being circulated on Facebook as well. So yeah, that's basically my summary. If anyone's got any questions.
I just put in the chat a link to our WCA page, which has a link to our leaflet and also a link to the survey. I was going to ask you, Sophie, do you know anyone that's actually filled in the survey yet? Any sort of is it easy, difficult? Is it any recommendations on the practicalities of filling it in?
I haven't done it yet because I wanted to wait until I'd attended the consultation this evening before I filled it in. But I think it's probably quite fairly straightforward, and I think you probably don't have to answer all the questions. And when I have had a go at doing it in the next couple of days, I can share some pointers that you can put on the website.
I've got a question. Is this a consultation by the planning authority?
No, it's by Island Green Power, who are the developers of the project. So because it's a nationally significant infrastructure project, they have to go through a very prescribed consultation process. The first consultation was several months ago when they just presented the outline plans, and then they've taken the feedback from that consultation to come up with a sort of phase 2, which is a lot more detailed plans. That's what they're consulting on for the next 3 months. And then that will go into their final plans that they will submit to the planning inspectorate in Bristol. I think they said it's on their website, but I think they said it would be around the end of this year that it would get submitted to the planning inspectorate.
And are there any hidden ground rules that it would be better if your consultation responses covered planning matters, or is this more wide open to your response to the project?
No, it's always better to cover planning matters.
Is there any possibility that someone can give us tips on responses that touch on planning matters? You know, when you object to a planning application, for instance, or support one, if your objection or support is irrelevant to planning matters, it doesn't have much weight. It'd be great if there was some kind of crib sheet.
Well,
Thanks, Mel.
well, I can certainly do that, because again, the Stop Lyme Down campaign have produced their version of a crib sheet that says what you should say if you want to object to the solar farm. So if you want to object to it, I suggest you go and look on their website. And if you would like to support it, I will in the next few days produce some arguments that would be relevant to that. And they do say that, you know, everything gets taken into consideration, but obviously planning related arguments are going to have more of an impact. And
thanks you, Sophie.
It all gets collated and counted and submitted to the planning inspectorate.
That's been really helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Sophie. I know you were busy this evening. Julian, you've got a hand up.
Yeah, just it closes on 29th of March, it says in the chat, so only sort of 8 weeks more or less.
Yeah, so there's plenty of time to think about it. And as I say, if anyone would like to help with distributing leaflets, then please get in touch with me or Julian.
Thank you. Now, and there's Bill.
Yeah, just a quick one. Is there a third consultation?
I don't think so.
There'll be the planning.
Well, the planning inspectorate, I think, will hold their own
inquiry.
Exactly. One. I think I'm not 100% familiar with the DCO process, but I think that once the planning application has been submitted to the planning inspectorate, they will consult on that too, because obviously what goes into planning will not be exactly what has been shared, you know, now. There'll be further refinements to it.
Okay, thanks, Sophie.
Now, we didn't completely finish talking about our June climate summit. We've got the option of breaking out and going home from our breakouts, or keeping it in the plenary. But one of the key questions we need to give more thought to is, unless I'm wrong, because the communities group hasn't, I'm not aware of what we've been doing, is can we help put forward suggestions for community organisations that we can invite to the Saturday of our event? And that could be town and parish councils, the question how to engage with them. It could be the public sector, schools, colleges, health and social care, or the emergency services, or it could be other community organisations. But this isn't about everyone celebrating how much we love nature, so much as how can we engage with people who can raise their climate ambitions and lower their greenhouse gas footprint. Anybody got any comment on that? Is that a useful conversation for us to have here? And should we have it in the whole group or in short breakouts? Help me, guys, and gals, especially the people who've still got brain cells working, the people in the steering group, or newcomers.
Okay. Hi, Andrew.
Yes,
sorry, I couldn't contribute to the community thing earlier. Sorry, my parents my mum's been in hospital today, so they were just filling me in. Anyway, yeah, with regards to all the other communities, because Jackie and I are more central and Mel's down in the south. We didn't have people all around the county. So the idea was if you knew of a community group or an organisation or parish council that have done these things, that if you could just maybe just pass them on to us or maybe speak to them yourselves. But we've put our emails in the chat there. So you can always email us with that group or a contact details so we can speak to them. Sorry, did you say all that already, Jackie?
No, that was absolutely brilliant. But I'd also say, please come and join us. We're quite a small group at the moment. We'd love some more, love some more support and ideas as well. More the merrier.
Is that further back in the chat then?
We put our emails in, yeah.
I want to emphasize that community means everything except business. So a town council, a parish council, a school, a college. I really think we should be engaging with Wiltshire College and large secondary schools. Could be the police, and I've got some engagement already with the police and the Police and Crime Commissioner. They have got an environmental sustainability strategy gathering dust on a shelf. Could
Well,
be,
schools this year have to produce a climate plan by September. So they will be becoming in my opinion, that should be combined with a local community approach as well. So again, getting the parish councils on board, town councils on board with the schools, and as we've seen real enthusiasm from the churches, it starts to bring all different levels of the community together.
That's fantastic. So that's a good timing for our summit then, if schools have to do their thing by September, because we know how head teachers and deputy heads don't get any summer holiday because they're having to write new policies. Maybe we could have a seminar, a couple of talks during the event on schools comparing best practice and supporting each other to do that.
Well, there's a very good scheme available, of whom Jen Gale is one of the local coordinators. So she spoke at the Dorset COP. So
Julian,
on exactly that.
And by the way, let's not break into breakouts, otherwise it's be to go on to midnight. Julian.
Yeah, I was just going to say the opposite, actually. It gives more people a chance to speak if we go into smaller groups and then we can collate it. But it's up to you. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
Can I just say for the business, please don't limit yourself to communities. If you're aware of businesses that are doing good things in this area and who might be prepared to share that, please tell Julian, just get the message to us, please.
And I think carbon zero in Wiltshire by 2030, how did we get here? We're pretty well aware we can't rely on the council to do it for us.
Because most of the emissions are coming from,
provide that energy and unleash all the individual efforts and get them working together.
Is it right that the council counts as a small or medium enterprise? It has a very small fraction of Wiltshire's emissions. The council has an organisation.
Not a $500 million turnover. It's not a small enterprise.
Okay.
Well, it's only about 3% of the county emissions, isn't it, or something like that? I think.
Right then.
Not scope 3. I think scope 3 are bigger on that. Anyway.
And we want
a
program.
If Ernst and Young have got anything to say, Anthony, please bring them along.
Yeah, no, I'm going to say I do know somebody from the Youth Action Wiltshire perspective to try and get schools involved.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
Jackie, I'll definitely try and connect with you for the church side, the diocese side, and then secondly the youth action, the community side of Youth Action Wiltshire.
Yeah.
There's only a slight problem. One of the key people there is it's got strong views on Lyme Down, actually. So I'll have to be a bit quiet on that.
Let's remember that we're an alliance. People ally not because they share everything in common, but because they have some important.
But what I'll be taking from Sophie is talk with some very interesting incentives there in terms of community shared ownership or whichever. So there are quite a few things. It was quite educational actually, because there's much more than meets the eye. So thank you.
We already have one of those, Anthony, in North Wales. So there is a community share.
Really?
I can't remember the name of the solar farm now, but Chippenham have got a community share option within there. I think it's 15% of the site.
Is that right? Yeah. I mean, so much. That's why sport's really useful. It's just you learn so much as to what's going on.
Tony, one of the things I'm eager about is young people, because we've had some incredibly talented and committed young people working with us in the past. they do annoying things like going to get jobs and careers. And if we can reach 2 young people who are getting more and more worried about
Really
what's it going to be like in 2070.
Pretty certain that can be possible. We've also got a local school at Yatton Kennel, which is just down the road from where I live. And yeah, I think, Jackie, if there's a school report that school has to produce by September, I have to check because my partners are on the, it's one of the governors there. I'll check and come back, but I like the idea, and let's see whether we could you know, make that idea fly and get
Well,
more.
as ever, unleash a few primary school children and
Well, that's the idea. Start them young.
Right. But
Get them out on the 25th of February.
And we can have some jolly fun on the Saturday. We could have a parade in Trowbridge if there was the will and the organisation ability to do that. For businesses, if we wanted us to give them prizes, best newcomer and so on, I'm sure we could arrange that. Is anyone here familiar with the sorts of awards that go to businesses for climate commitment, achievement and so on? Anyone at all?
There's certain certificates like
Jimmy.
B Corp,
Salisbury Transition City did a couple of awards over the last few years, and I've just been sent the list of the winners this afternoon, so I'll get that over to you guys in due course.
Would you be able to tell us more about the judging criteria and all that background stuff as well, Jimmy?
I would love to be able to, but I don't know what they were.
Or give us somebody who
I wasn't
can.
involved in the process. I will see what I can do about that, but the person who did it's about to disappear off the face of the earth for a lot.
Let's grab their resources before they go.
Yeah, great.
Brilliant.
Right now, anyway.
Bill, is Bill saying goodbye or leaving?
I think so.
Bill's disappeared. Still not used to cyberspace. Well, and does anyone know college teachers or another stakeholder is trade unions that we haven't engaged with very strongly in the past, but I know that a lot of the big unions have committed environmental and climate advocates, such as the one I was in, Universities and Colleges Union.
Interesting.
Any no takers for that? Well, we're half the number that we were, a third of the number we were at the peak of this meeting. I'm really cheeky with you, pushing you to turn up at 7 and still be compos mentis after 9. I think we've got somewhere. Any other contributions on approaching community? Jeremy, you've got something to say.
No, going back to the council meeting on the 20th. Was it 25th?
Yes.
25th. I've just been in contact with the grandmas of Trowbridge.
Yes.
And they're not available. I know, for some stupid reason they're meeting on the Thursday before.
Can they just send the toddlers along?
I know. Yeah.
I'm very excited about the link to churches in Salisbury Diocese, in what's the diocese covering Swindon?
Bristol covers the area, Castle Combe, Slaughterford, Biddeston, etc. Whether it covers Swindon, Swindon, I don't think so. Chippenham, I think it's just outside, but I can find out for you if you like.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
The default email address will always be contact@wiltshireclimatealliance.org.uk. But of course, it's better if you're emailing the people who are running things. Matthew.
Yeah, there's a sustainable business event organised by the Town Council's Climate Officer in Chippenham and Good Energy, actually, on the 25th of February, I think it is. So I can use that as contacts for your to raise the COP as well. I also work with the town team and the town quarters in Chippenham, which I've not had much in success in raising environmental concerns. Even when there's free funding around, it just tends to drop off into silence when I mention it. But keep on keeping on. Obviously, we've got contacts with the town council's climate officer, who was ill for quite a long time last year, but is now coming back on stream and in regular contact. And Zero Chippenham, I know Nick Murray's been talking. So lots of local networks that we can probably help with. Hopefully Zero Chippenham. I guess you could ask in sustainability groups to have a stand. I guess, you know, the groups here will probably have some kind of showing.
And the other thing that's sort of going on in the background is that my husband and Julian and Christian, when he was around, are working on revamping the website. And we want to very much raise the profile of what local groups are doing, you know, so that you can be seen to be doing whatever activities you're specialising in and covering, and making that very accessible to the next group along geographically, you know, that, well, maybe we're not doing a swap shop this month, but we can see the, you know, say for Chippenham, Carn is. So then, you know, you can share that people don't have to travel far to get those facilities. And also sharing expertise like the way Chippenham is doing the energy, both sides of the energy, both reducing from retrofit, but also production. You know, that's really inspiring for other groups to see what you get up to.
Yeah, it's hard work, I've got to admit. I've had a lot of success with YouTube videos lately, actually, although, as somebody said earlier, it's entirely watched by middle-aged men who want to learn about heat pumps. I mean, of the 4,000 views we had on our home energy channel, 100% were male. There was 0% were female, so it kind of shows the audience we're missing. Or
not very inclusive, then, is it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you need to do it when you're wearing shorts. Like the fireman calendars, you know.
Yeah, Pirelli equivalents.
Yeah, need a different presenter, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Let's not go there. There's a lot of marketing theory about who are the innovators and the pioneers and the actual deciders when it comes to buying. And I don't care which gender investigates the heat pumps, as long as a household gets one.
And another thing that's quite exciting is that Bath University are getting more funding to do more innovation, particularly in building work, you know, in making that totally sustainable. So they're expanding that department, which is great. And I also gathered that Wiltshire isn't going to be able to cozy up to other counties. That's been turned down. They're just going to have to carry on soldiering on alone.
I think we need to clarify this, because the information I've seen, they're not in the initial round, the fast track.
The priority program.
They are still, you know, it will still happen in the next few years, probably.
Yeah, and hopefully.
The combined mayoral authority, which will put a layer of authority called the mayor over and above the Wiltshire Council, will continue to exist, won't it? I understand. Okay, and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole are opting into the combined authority area with Wiltshire, Dorset and Somerset. I think they had no option. Okay, but Swindon, as we at the moment, isn't. Wiltshire Council are very disappointed. I think they wanted to get into the new money stream as quickly as they could, and they did put a lot of energy into that. Look, that's been a wonderful, wide-ranging discussion on even just on this summit event. Also, the election, I'm seeing it with new eyes, and I want to thank everyone who's still here for coming. And let's switch the recording off and make this and any other business and go home